If you've not had a chance to hear Daz speak, you will soon see why he is in the Professional Speakers Association Hall of Fame and was named last year as the Educator of the Year. Each year, he custom builds from scratch a brand new keynote for Future of Leadership. Last year, as some of you would have seen, he stunned the crowd with a spoken word slam poetry piece that was just amazing. And personally, I'm gunning for Darren performing his entire keynote this year as an interpretive dance. We soon will see. He is a man that I now like to call a close and personal friend, but he's asked me not to. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up and put your hands together for Dangerous Darren Hill.
For as long as I can remember, I've known there's something special within me. It might sound a little strange to hear someone say it so openly, because you belong to the same culture as I do. It's the one where you don't sing your praises, much less put it into phrases. You keep it quiet, stuck in your throat, you keep it tight, and you don't big note. Because I, like so many, had that middle-class youth, taught politeness and quietness, and a simple truth. My parents, like most, well, they worked hard. They bought the small house on the oversized yard, and whilst we didn't know the big end of town, we weren't on Struggle Street either. For we were the era of kids who were explorers on two wheels and knew to finish a day's roam and be home as the streetlight shone their first glimpses of drab yellow light. The town, the bush, the trails and the paths took us on a nature's quest, a natural craft, the great outdoors, the earth and all its creatures, serving both as playground and as teachers. It was a great way to grow and find your place in the world. But this world, of course, carried both the light and the eclipse. Forget the sun's warmth on my skin and my lips, because despite the offer of joy and the glow, I was curiously drawn to a long and persistent shadow. My choice wasn't to search for meaner human right, but to crave the acceptance of others as a false candle's light. And the crave to be part of that maddening crowd had grown so loud that to feed that need, I adopted a creed based around greed. But not around money or fame, but rather the aversion of shame. You see, I'd found my place in the world, but it was someone else's world, not mine. I tried too hard for the people that didn't matter, and I didn't try hard enough for the ones that did. I tried to chase the goals that others held and make them my own, but the seeds were sown, and what grew from that ground, I soon found it wasn't mine. And yet all the while, it waited. This good within me. At the end of the path I ought to be travelling, it sat, patient, like an old liar's woman. One with weathered features and a knowing smile on her face. She didn't push me, rush me, wind the screws or crush me, and nor did she ever walk away. Knowing but not demanding, for she knew I'd come around. From the dark valleys and shadows of guilt to the heartache, regret and truth that I spilt, she knew I'd come back to her. And this good within me, it's now here in force, when I'm conscious, of course, and after 47 spins around this rock, it comes as no shock that all the things that we might lose and we fear, all the things that we hold most dear, they're connected to this good within. Because when a heart is full, it's a gravitational pull that brings us all for which we search and all that we stargaze for. Like 2 decades of partnership with my beautiful wife, I struck pure gold. I found the great love of my life. It's the struggle and the tease and the celebrations and the simple ease of two souls connected by both tears and a laugh. We walk independent, but down that same path. And this woman, she gifted me 2 kids. And what a gift they are. Their belly laughs at the dinner table. It's the perfect antidote for any earthly ailment, of that I'm convinced. And they say our children are our greatest teachers. Well, I know this to be true because one small conversation with those twin bloody tornadoes, it reminds me of the good in me. It's the same good in you too. It's just waiting to break through. And it's these small reminders of our inherent good that remind us of priority and that we should commit to doing the real work to find the true pursuit for belonging. Because it's these things that we crave that only serve to enslave, that aren't about finding your place in this world. No, it requires a different search. A search for your world in this place. Your world in this place, that's where to covet the time and space in this crazy race called life, because it's this trail that's not a trial. And it's this journey that's taken me quite a while. But the better part of me and the better part of you, that's a meandering path worth sticking to. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There are these wonderful little moments in life where we get this chance to just achieve what seems perfect clarity. In amongst all the noise and the humdrum and the busyness of life, all of a sudden we find those little pockets. And I had one of those present themselves to me in January of this year as I sat down to consider what I might talk about at this year's Future of Leadership series. I got a chance to have that moment of reflection and clarity that we get to live extraordinary lives, don't we? And to even make that more accurate, we get to lead these lives that have these wonderful, extraordinary moments within them. And as I sat there in that state, that chance to look back on life, I realised that there are 4 major accomplishments that have shaped my life to this point. The first of those accomplishments was in my 20s. I stared into the darkness within my soul, overcome addiction, and what that did was present an opportunity where my heart was open enough for the second and, without doubt, I believe the greatest accomplishment of my life, and that was that I was able to fall in love and stay in love with my beautiful wife, Ali. Now, Alison Catherine Hill is not the perfect woman, but she is the perfect woman for me. I fall more in love with her every year. And the fact that I've said that in front of 500 odd people, some really nice stuff in a poem just a second ago, surely my brownie points are going through the roof, wouldn't you? Because there is a fishing trip I want to go on later in the year. And I consider you all material witnesses for my pursuit to go on that fishing trip now. I may call you into question later. So the third big accomplishment of my life is to be a wonderfully proud father of my 2 kids, Pat and Kate. If I apply a business lens to them, technically I was just an angel investor. I didn't have a lot to do with the 9-month incubation phase as it launched. I was really super happy with the initial returns, and they seem to be maturing as an asset quite nicely. And then, of course, is the fourth big accomplishment, and the most recent one that Ali and I sometimes refer to as our third and possibly our most demanding child, and that is Pragmatic Thinking, this wonderful company that we've founded and has undergone some extraordinary growth in the last 4 years. I tell you about these 4 accomplishments because the first 3, I won't bore you with the details around those unless you supply me with copious amounts of alcohol, which could be quite boring for you, but not so much for me. But then there's the 4th of these, which will be the context for my talk today. It's the role that I've played and some reflection on that role in a company that undergoes extraordinary growth. And it has been extraordinary, as Andrew mentioned. In 2017, 2018, we placed on the Australian Financial Review Fast 100 list. I reckon we're going to three-peat that this year. And so it places us into alumni groups of businesses such as Atlassian, Red Balloon, Seek, REA Group, and a host of others. And it truly is humbling to know what we've done so far and also where we go. The interesting thing about that is when you start that journey, when you go into that, a leader's job is, if you're going to take people on a journey, is to consider why are we even doing this in the first place? And so when Ali and I first sat down, it was truly to consider, if we're going to take a group of people, it has to be something bigger than us, bigger than them, but it needs to be a purpose that we can connect to. And so when we sat down and we considered what that might look like, our purpose, is we decided to jump into that space and consider why the hell we were doing this in the first place. And in the earliest days, when you're a really small team, the concept of purpose is nice and easy to connect to because it's just through lots and lots of conversations. But as you grow, you need to actually get that consolidated. And so for Ali and I and our team at Pragmatic Thinking, our purpose is a big one. It's to go in and work with organisations like yourselves and help people with that third of their life that is work. So broadly speaking, we've got a third for sleep, third for work, and third for everything else. And if we can make work an amazing experience, then it benefits the other two. And if it's a terrible experience, then it affects the other two. And so that's the primary part of our purpose. But then the secondary part is if we're going to go and talk to people around leadership and culture, the two biggest levers around how we can make work a great experience, then we've got to demonstrate that ourselves. Now, the cool thing is that if you find a purpose and you dig deep enough on it, what it should do, that purpose, is it should inspire you to challenge yourself and your people's behaviours and take it to another level. And then equally, what it should do, a good purpose, is it should scare the shit out of you to also raise your standards and turn up with even better behaviour. And so it should have both of those. And my question to you this morning as a leader of your teams, do you understand your purpose well enough? And does it have that twin effect on you? Does it challenge you every day when you look at it to play bigger and to step into an even bigger space? And so when Ali and I first created this, I had that sense that, am I actually going to be good enough to stand in that? And I ask myself that question on such a regular basis, it's not funny. One of the things that I know to be true is that to live that kind of purpose is the best place to start isn't actually professional development. It's not going to be if I can whip up a great spreadsheet that we're going to achieve that. It actually, the one place we can always go back to over and over again as leaders is actually be better as a human being. Sometimes we get so wrapped up on how we can professionally improve our skills, and we need that base. But truthfully, when you turn up a better human being, then you turn up a better leader by default. And so that challenge lay there for me in particular 4 years ago. And what I decided was I need to find out what type of leader I needed to be. Like we all should. We ask ourselves that question of who do I need to become to be a great leader? And so, or at least one that could live up to the purpose. For me, I thought I needed to go and get offline and discover that. So I decided there was a place that I needed to go to find out about myself. I needed to dig in and kind of find out what sort of leadership style I had. And so I asked myself some big questions. And anyway, the ones right up the back possibly can't read that, but that's probably useful anyway. And so I thought there's only one place I could go. I put 3 days in my calendar and off I headed. And you probably guess where that place would be, the place where you go and you work out who the hell you are. And it's the Rudy Hill RSL Club on a Thursday night raffles. No, it isn't that. That's the second choice for most of us. And I decided I'd head off to Byron Bay. Now, Byron Bay's famous for a whole bunch of things, isn't it, right? It's famous for its magnificent coastline. It's famous for its crystal clear water and magnificent surf breaks. It's famous for an aquatic marine land, that's just breathtaking. And it's also famous for being the anti-vax capital of Australia. But it's anyway, where else can you go in Australia and not only get a suntan but smallpox? It's like an added bonus, right? And so also what it's famous for is the easternmost point of Australia where the sun bathes our continental shelf for the first time. It truly makes it an extraordinary place. What also makes it extraordinary is men with flower beards like Tommy Franklin there. And without doubt, Byron Bay is famous for one thing above all other things, and that is that it is a place where you can go to expand your mind, isn't it? And so I headed off to Byron. And I didn't just head to Byron just to rip in, to get on the bong for a few days and that kind of stuff. But I did want to use the time and space to actually examine what type of leader I want to be. Now, the best thing about Byron Bay is when you turn up there looking to improve yourself, try and find yourself, that kind of stuff, not only is it a place where you can access lots of people who want to help, you don't even need to ask. They just come straight up to you, don't they? And so I've checked into the room and I'm doing a lap around Byron, just walking through the streets. And sure enough, within no time, like literally a couple of minutes, I had Gary and Fern approach me. Now, Gary and Fern looked a little wilted, by the way, but anyway, so Gary and Fern, I actually thought that joke go heaps better in my head, but anyway, that's, so Gary and Fern were there and they'd set up their office on the corner of Johnson and Byron Streets. Now, that coincidentally is straight out the front of the Northern Hotel, but so they'd set up there, and then Gary went on to tell me about this ancient art form that he'd learned and been passed down through countless generations. 4,000 years we've discovered this stuff, and it was basically if you get these crystals and line them up on your meridian lines, and these crystals which look like rocks that he picked up off the beach, but anyway, these ancient crystals that you put them on your meridian lines, not only will it solve your health problems, but it'll solve the problems of the whole universe. Now, I was a little challenged by Gary's findings, mainly the fact that it hadn't helped him and Fern solve the problem of keeping a dentist appointment for the last 10 years. But anyway, I thank Gary and Fern for their time, and I decided to head to a space that I know really well to do some self-reflection, and it's just a coffee shop with a journal, right? Hands up who do a bit of journaling, just grab a bit of time and space, yeah. And so I've headed to a space. I had Bayleaf Cafe, really good cafe there. I've ordered their house speciality, which was a decaf turmeric latte on macadamia milk, and it tastes as good as it sounds, you know, and I still don't know how they got disappointment in a cup, but it was there, right? Anyway, so I've turned around with my journal, and I got the left-hand side of it, and what I did was the key skill set of anyone who wants to lead better is you've got to have the skill to ask good questions. Not just good questions, but great ones, right? And where we start is to ask ourselves great questions. And so I sat down that left-hand side of the page there as I sat there at Bayleaf, and I started right down with my filtered water, and I'm writing, and in no time, like within 15 minutes, I come up with just some really searching questions that when I looked at them, I went, that's where I've got to find the answers. And then 2.5 hours later, I'm still looking at a blank right-hand side of my journal. 1 activated almond and mung bean salad, and a kombucha chaser later, nothing on the other side of it. And therein was my great lesson of my time in Byron Bay. Even within that first 3 hours of my time there, is that a leader's job is to ask great questions of themselves and their people, for sure. But never forget that the second part of it is to be prepared for the answers. And when we say be prepared for the answers, we tend to go, be prepared for the answers. You think armour, we think be ready, be risk averse. But the truth is, to be prepared for the answers means to be in the right energy to hear them properly. And how many times do we ask questions of our customers, our teams, ourselves, our bosses, whoever it is, but we're in a poor state, we're tired, we're frazzled, we're in a challenge, and we don't hear those answers well. And the truth is that what we've got to do is set our state, set our space to hear that stuff and hear that magic from our people, from our front lines, and from our customers. And so that was my rest of my time in Byron, was just simply to work on my state and challenge myself around what energy I needed to bring to a room as a leader. And over the course of the time, as we continue to grow as a business, have I got that right? Hell no. But I get it right some of the time. And the challenge for us, and what we've continued this conversation, is how do we turn up a room? Because as a leader, we have a choice, right? But I love that old saying when some people light up a room when they walk into it, and some people light up a room when they walk out of it, right? Now, we've got the choice to be one of those two. And that starts with us, and it starts with the energy that we bring to this room. And so that was where I went away, and we've continued this conversation with our team. And if you get the chance to meet any of the pragmatic thinking team, that's one thing that we work really hard on, is to make sure that we bring the right energy, because the rest gets a real chance to take effect. So my question to you is, what do you do to invest in the energy of yourself and your team to get the best out of them? Interesting thing around that is that each year we, like most organisations, have ourselves 2-day off-sites, and so we invited the wonderful Nam Baldwin, who you'll hear after lunch this afternoon, who Heidi mentioned, without doubt Australia's most in-demand high-performance specialist. He's just an extraordinary guy. You're going to have a wonderful session with him, and we had a wonderful session too. We started with a theory-based session around state, how you control your energy space, and he said, come on, let's just ramp this up, let's get down to the pool. And so that's what we did. We went to the pool, and he set us a challenge, and he said, I want you to breathe all the air out of your lungs, and you're going to go onto the bottom of that pool for 1 minute breath hold. Sounds like a long time. But not only that, I want you to do it 3 times back to back with a single breath in between. So empty all the air out of your lungs, down on the bottom of the pool, breathe in, empty it all out, back down. And not only did we do it, we'd done it effortlessly. And it showed us that control can make a huge difference. And the wonderful thing is that when we set our energy extremely well, what it does more than anything is it gives us the chance as leaders to be present. Arguably one of the most valuable things that we have in our world today is attention. And we get that chance to bring all of ourselves to a conversation, to a meeting, or to the strategy that we're trying to implement. And it's amazing when we turn up present, not only how it changes our people, but it changes lives. I had this wonderful privilege. By the way, we discovered a few things in that pool session. One of those was that we hired a vampire, or at least an extra in a Twilight movie. That's Ryan, one of our facilitators. Not a big fan of the sun, obviously. And there was also another big discovery within that session, and you may have picked up on it. It was the fact that Lukey, in front of him there, he snuck in with that white singlet still on, didn't he? So lots of discovery within that session. But what we learned was this chance that our energy, what we bring to a room, the energy you bring to this room today is a filter on how you will take that info. And what a wonderful start from Michael and the band to encourage us into that state. What we do is get the chance to be present and truly make a difference. One of those places and spaces and a rare opportunity that I got to see this firsthand was in 2014 when I got to first become engaged with Hands Across the Water, this wonderful partner charity that this whole thing is put on for. I signed up for one of their January bike rides. So if anyone hasn't heard about those, what you do is you raise $10,000, you do a bit of training, usually not enough, but you get yourself on a bike and you cycle for 800 kilometres through rural and regional Thailand in January in summer, and you finish at one of their facilities. And it's an amazing experience. You get to see the money that you've raised, where it goes to, and it's just extraordinary. Now, for those non-bike riders in the room, 800 Ks is a really long way. It's the equivalent of riding from Sydney to London and back. Now, that's not to scale, but it bloody well feels like that. And so at the end of this long and arduous trek, the mud, the blood, the sweat and the tears, you ride into one of these facilities and they have this wonderfully unique process where you ride in, there's a bit of a party, you treat it like a rock star, but then you get to meet one of the kids who becomes your chaperone for your day there. They take you around, they lead you, they hold your hand the whole way and they lead you and show you where they eat and where they do the school and a whole bunch of stuff, and it's just such a precious experience. And in 2014, I got to witness something extraordinary, and it was Stephen Di Pietro, this guy on screen here, a wonderfully proud Italian-Australian guy. And you'll notice in his left arm is Matthew, the mother of the orphanage, without doubt the most extraordinary human being I've ever had the privilege to meet. A woman who, across the course of 2 decades of setting up Home Hug, this wonderful droplet of humanity that takes care of kids suffering HIV and AIDS, and in that time, in those 2 decades, she buried 1,047 children in a time. But the same woman who since Hands has come in and given her support hasn't lost a single child to HIV/AIDS. It's the way it should be. And so this woman in his left arm and then this beautiful little porcelain doll-faced child in his right arm, cartoon. And so Steve, like all of us, when he met these kids, he wanted to know the backstory. We all did. How did they come to be here? And so he went to Matthew and he said, "Tell me, cartoon, what's the story? Why is she here?" And Matthew looked at Steve and said, "Cartoon, she has bad heart." Steve, like any of us in this room, said, "Well, what are we doing for her? Are we getting her the specialist care? Are we getting the surgeons? What are we doing to help her?" Matthew realised she'd been misunderstood and she said, "No, Steve, not bad heart, broken heart." The trauma that little girl had faced in her earliest years just had ripped the very things that we love about kids, the joy in the life. There was never a smile on her face. She was disengaged and she was challenged. And so Steve did what any of us would do. He picked that girl up and he gave her a hug. But he didn't stop there because he turned up all in that day. And so whilst most of us were going around with the kids, Steve just stayed in such contact with this little girl and he just showed her who he was and let her know that he was there for her. And it's extraordinary when two human beings connect, and it doesn't take that long. I remember much later on in the day, I went up to him and I said, mate, I'm going to check your bags before we leave here. I think we've got a stowaway coming. And much later on, he's still carrying this girl around. I said, mate, how's your arm going? He said, I ain't putting her down. I lost all feeling in it hours ago, but I ain't putting her down. And it's extraordinary the difference we can make. The truth is, it got pretty bloody loose later on in the night. And we had a cracking night with those kids, and it was absolutely an experience that left a mark on my soul. And I've had this wonderful chance to go back and return to Home Hug a number of times and see what the work that's been done over there, but to also see little Cartoon grow into this wonderfully beaming, she's such a rock star. And I tell you, there's so many things that have contributed towards her success. That's the care and support of the team at Home Hug for sure, and the funding that hands provide them to give them that future. They're all such incredibly large variables in her success, but they still tell the story about Steve. Never forget, when we turn up with the best of ourselves, it changes everything. And it's funny, but right to this point, you might be going, well, okay, so we've talked about some things. We're talking about fast start leadership and edge of the market and all that stuff, but yet all I've really talked about is get yourself a purpose, right? Get one that really, really matters. Let's talk about questions and the answers and being prepared for them and turning up with the right energy and being truly present. And they all just seem so simple. But then, isn't that leadership? Isn't leadership and our role as leaders to make the chaos and the complexity of life simpler for people? Isn't it to take the noise and bring some quiet from time to time? Isn't it when they're flat to raise them? And these are the challenges that we're going to face as leaders, is to try and bring that space to them. We can reflect on some wonderful words of wisdom in bite-sized forms, like the wonderful Shah Henderson, this incredible Maori woman from across the ditch, who challenges us that if we truly want to grow into something, that we've got to make the choice to leave some stuff behind. And you as a leader, how do you help people navigate that change of identity that they need to do before they get stuck? Perhaps it's the wonderful David White, an Irish philosopher, poet, who challenged that the real courageous conversations are the ones we're yet to have. And it's you, the person who needs to ask those questions to get them out and give them life and get really stuck into it rather than the veneer. Perhaps it's the spirit of an Elizabeth Gilbert, who challenges that there are things that we need to stand up for, otherwise we'll fall for anything. Or perhaps it's the rapier-like wit and wisdom of someone like Ricky Gervais, who says that sometimes to get the best out of our people, we've got to ignore the noise around us. Whatever those pieces of wisdom are, I promise you that they're not the Magna Carta. They're not war and peace, but they're the simplification of what is a complex life. And so what I'd like to do is leave you with a final thing before you head to the first break, and I think it is potentially the greatest leadership lever that we can pull for ourselves, and to go to different levels. And the really interesting thing about it is, regardless of all the industries that we have in the room, regardless of the levels, the things that become complex for you or not, we all share this one thing in common. And the one thing in common that every person in this room has is that at one space and time, we're all going to cease to exist. Now, that went really morbid really fast, didn't it? Yeah? You kind of go, what a little ray of sunshine that bloke is, right? But the truth is that we are all going to perish at some point. In fact, I had the research team at Pragmatic Thinking look into this for me just to confirm it. It's true, we are all going to die at some point. So given the fact that all of us aren't going to be around forever, here's a leverage point for all of us to use. So what I want you to do is consider the following, is that we are all going to die, but I want you to imagine your death. What could your death look like? Now, what you could do for this exercise we're about to do, just for a nanosecond, is you can imagine a death such as, I'm 90 years of age and I kind of peacefully slip off to another world surrounded just by a few friends and family around me. And I'd say, for the purposes of this exercise, that is lame. right? So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine a death that's just a bloody belter, right? Like just a death that when they're having that wake and they've got the thousands of people who've come to it, just remarking and go, wow, what a way to go. I want you to think of a death like your wingsuit fails as you're trying to set like a Red Bull kind of speed record or something, or maybe you're trying to break Alex Honnold's free solo record up El Capitan and you slip to your death and they go, oh, well, at least he was doing something he loved, or maybe there's just this ferocious, frenzied great white shark that's in the ocean and you jump in front of it to save a puppy, and I don't really know why the puppy was there, but the puppy made it out alive and you didn't. What a way to go, right? So I want you to consider just for a split second what might be a cracking death for you. Got something? All right. Now you've got it. My question to you would be that if tomorrow was your last today, if the next moment was the last moment, then would you be happy with what you've left behind? Would the leadership footprint and legacy of the people that you work with be something to be truly proud of? Because if your world was to end today, then what might people say? That you were a bringer of light, of energy, possibility and might? Or have you turned up half in? Maybe you bought into the sin to play half in. Perhaps the tunnel felt too dark and too long. No rhythms, heartbeat, no music, no song. It might have been a pain memory that brought you the dark, or a past disappointment that dimmed your spark. But chin up, yeah? Chin up. Because we just need a glimmer, an ember of hope, the chance to climb out and grab onto that rope. To grab onto the rope. And if we can, yeah? Because there's a little key here for you and me, and it's curiosity, don't you see? The chance to ask the grand question of what if. For some it's a curse and others it's a gift, but what if? What if I took the step and I made the leap? Would it work or would I weep? And if you are brave and you do take that step, then that thing that you crave right down deep, well, that's where we really start living, isn't it? It's certainly where we start leading. So seize the moment, seize the day. Sweat the small stuff, but in all the right ways. Because there's no love without risk, and there's no great without the weight of expectations. Because if we don't ask the grand question of what if, then it's replaced with the two loneliest words on the planet. If only. If only, it's so lonely, if only. So summon a little energy, a small bit of attention. Keep your powder dry, for I might just mention once more from this floor before you head out that door. The better part of me, the better part of you, it's a leader's path worth sticking to. Do the work on you. Thank you.